Hi everyone, welcome to another Reasons and Resources episode. So this week we're looking at a favourite of mine, Lisp. And we'll be looking at reasons and resources for learning Lisp, alongside my own reasons for dabbling in the language. So I'll include the usual links, and we'll start off with quickly looking at some of the Wikipedia side resources. I'll include deep links to within the Lisp article and outside of it, and then we'll go through, we'll have a look at how it fares in the Stack Overflow survey from last year, talk a little bit about Common Lisp, look at some resources online which I've enjoyed watching when I recently decided that now was a good time to fully embrace my desire to learn Lisp, and then we'll finish it off with the usual look at exercism and also my own polyglot programming project. See what we've got on there in terms of Lisp. Yes, so Lisp has been around a long time. To me, it's like one of the originals, alongside things like, COBOL, Fortran, Algo, those sort of things. You might often hear that people refer to Lisp as being, or Lisp's syntax as being highly expressive, which in turn allows you to write concise and readable code. And rather than me do a real poor job of trying to explain what expressivity is, what I will do is include this link, because further down here it has a really interesting paper on the expressive power of programming languages, which is on the Science Direct website, and you can actually download this one. So yeah, you can go in, download that, read a paper on the expressiveness of programming languages. It's an interesting thing to think about, maybe something you haven't thought of before. So that might be a reason to learn, is to sort of explore expressive power in languages and see how that manifests itself in Lisp. There's also things like Lisp's macro system, which allows you to create new syntactic constructs. So if metaprogramming is something that you're really interested in, then it might be worthwhile exploring Lisp for that. For me, and another reason why you might want to explore it, is the historical importance. So it's one of the oldest high-level programming languages, and I think, and I know it's sort of fairly, I would say, what's the word I'm looking for here? A popular opinion, I suppose, is that learning it sort of provides you insight into various principles and history in computer science. Alongside its general historical importance, you have the importance if you're interested in functional programming paradigms, because it leans into that very heavily. Now, my reasons for learning it, as I've said, are historical reasons, but also having dabbled several years ago in Clojure, I was interested in exploring other Lisp dialects, other functional programming languages. And there is an interesting list here, timeline, in the article, which I'll include a deep link to, which shows you the timeline of Lisp dialects. So there's been quite a number over the years. Clojure's down here, and we will be talking about Common Lisp in a moment, as it's tied in with the ANSI standard. And this, when I sort of went back recently and had a look at Lisp again, this is the particular, if you like, the dialect of Lisp that I dove into. Scheme's another one I've looked at in passing as well. But yeah, this was the one specifically when I was looking at Lisp itself. And I'll include deep links to its connection to artificial intelligence, which is actually another reason, alongside things like Prologue, as to why it's on my list of languages to learn, but also it features in my programming book library as well. Deep link to further reading, and this is a very interesting book as well in terms of resources. So SICP, Computer Science Textbook, also known as the Wizard Book. There is also a version of this for, is it the later one? Yeah, the JavaScript version, 2022. But this is the original version, which uses Scheme, actually, which is a dialect of Lisp. So you uses Scheme. Got some external links here as well that you might be interested in. I'll include a deep link to that. There's some free books as well, and we'll talk a little bit about online resources outside of Wikipedia in a moment. There is also the history of Lisp, which you might be interested in reading through. In terms of where it sort of places in the Stack Overflow survey, and this video was still on 2024, because as of me shooting this video, the 2025 one hasn't come out yet. And if we go down the list and I suppose ignore the dialects for the moment and just look at where it is placed here in terms of most popular technologies, you can see, yeah, it is here alongside Clojure. I'm not sure where Scheme is in here, if at all, actually. But anyway, there's Lisp there, 1.5%. Admired and desired, let's see where it is on this graph, which always intrigues me. So 57.3% admired, 2.1% desired. So pretty wide there on the admired to desired range. And then we've got top paying technologies. Let's see where it is. Fairly high up, just under F sharp. And above Groovy, and then we've got Go and Rust and Zig. And if we go up a bit, we can see there's Clojure. And I would say the first Lisp based language I seriously tried to learn was Clojure, I think. Now this time round, I went down the Common Lisp rabbit hole, so I'll include a link to that. Particularly this, which I found very useful, this free and open source Common Lisp implementation. Yeah, found it very easy to use. So I'll include the Wikipedia article to that, and then you can dig it up. Here's the actual link itself, so I'll include that as well. So that might save you rooting through the article. We've also got the Common Lisp wiki, which is very useful. All sorts of interesting things on there you can try out and read about. There's a Learn Common Lisp on lisp-lang.org. There, so that's the Common Lisp website there. So very useful. Now we also have this book. So this is actually the book I've had for a number of years, and up till recently I basically just read it. Probably when I first got it, I did dabble in some of the stuff on here in this, whatever IDE for it I was able to get hold of at the time. I don't think it was necessarily Stillbank Common Lisp. I can't remember specifically what it was because it was a number of years ago. And I have a sort of facsimile copy of this, which is what this is. It's been released by Penguin Random House Canada. I think I've got maybe an earlier one of these, but I don't have an original copy. However, it is on the software preservation website. There we go. So if you don't want to buy a physical copy, it's there. Very handy. So I'll include this this Google search so you can go through and track down. There's a number of different copies of it out there on the web. Yeah, this is one I've got, like the one I've got, the blue one. So yeah, this would be the 1985 version, second edition, which is the one that I have. In terms of interesting videos to watch, there's a good computer file one on the use of Lisp in quantum programming. There's this one, which is something called Let's Lisp Like It's 1959. And this one, which is one of my favourites, it doesn't mention specifically about Lisp, but in it the speaker does some live coding and actually writes a Lisp interpreter in Lisp, which is pretty cool to watch. And there's a number of very useful links here as well. Or, well, you can't click on them, but you could Google these. And then finally, there's a really interesting Developer Voices episode where they talk about Lisp and nanotechnology. It's a particularly interesting episode. Advent Computing had a number of successive episodes on Lisp. So they started off, I think it was episode 73, IPL, AI and linked lists, so sort of the forerunner, if you like. And then there's an episode on the elegance of Lisp, so I'll include some links to those. There's lots of other languages that get discussed on that podcast as well. Common Lisp is featured on Exorcism, and so it has the usual exercises to try out in the language. This one's quite good. It's got quite a number of learning exercises and things you can try out as well. So yeah. And then I do have an entry in my Programming Polyglot WordPress site on Lisp. So it goes through, and all the entries for these, I always look at the same set of features. So I do an overview, and then I do binding and scope. And so now we can actually see a little bit of what the language looks like. So if you're not used to you seeing these sort of Lisp-based languages, then it can be a little bit unnerving. I don't know if that's the right word. There's a lot of brackets. Let's just say that. So dynamic scope. I've got a little bit in here for this particular one. I have included how to actually run the examples in Stillbank Common Lisp. I don't always do that in all of the entries, but for this one it was useful to include that. So what have we got here? This is a section on functions and closures in Lisp. Then we've got frames and argument passing. So some explanations about that and some code you can try out. Prototypes and classes. And in terms of, what can you do in Lisp that would be like, would be like that. Extensions, extending a language functionality, which can mean a number of different things actually. Dispatch, so that's where you have a system where you determine which function or method to invoke at runtime. So how dispatching works in Lisp. Operators, and you can see probably the basic operators. Yeah, there's a lot of commonality with the certain operators that are used. Conditional expressions, how they manifest themselves in Lisp. Matching, how that might be done in Lisp. Type systems and also type inference, which are obviously interrelated. Immutability. Persistent structures. Processes and threads in Lisp. Messaging. Synchronization. This bit, which is a bit about just explaining pointers and garbage, and whether or not they're used in a particular language, in this case Lisp. And then metaprogramming, macros, which I mentioned at the start. And of course, once I recorded this video, this reasons and resources will go down the bottom of this article. One thing I did notice in putting this together, and all the exploratory coding that I do, where I'm using LLMs as like a coding partner almost, is that because of the sheer amount of Lisp code out there, you get pretty good results if you're using sort of large language models to generate Lisp coding, or at least I did anyway. So that's always really handy. So hopefully you enjoyed that look through reasons and resources for learning Lisp. As I've said, I'll include all my links that I've spoken about. Thanks once again for watching. Bye for now, and I will catch you in a future episode.